Here is my week 5 Adobe Express video on making a Sumerian sculpture. Here's a photo of all the materials I used. So I used clay, paper towels, plate, I used a knife, a fork, some water, and I had my computer for reference and instructions. I then used the lid to the clay container to make my slip, so I just mixed some clay with some water, and I mixed that with a fork. So first I rolled a small amount of clay into a ball and I shaped it into a slight oval shape for the head. And then I took a slightly bigger piece of clay and I shaped it into a cube, and I pinched the one end of the cube a little bit to form more of a triangular shape for the top of the body. And then I grabbed a large amount of clay and I made a cylinder and I rolled it with my hand at a slight angle to make the shape of the skirt. I used the slip as an adhesive to use in between each of the layers, and I stacked all of them on top of each other to make the base of my sculpture. I then wrapped my sculpture in a wet paper towel and I let it sit for about an hour. Next, I took small portions of clay and I rolled them to tiny long pieces to create the arms. As you see in the first photo, I used a knife to cut them to the proper length. And then I used my slip to pretty much paste them onto my sculpture. As you see in the second photo, I paste them as a way to match the angularity of a typical Sumerian sculpture. I then wrapped my sculpture in a wet paper towel again, and I let it sit in a trash bag to complete at a later time. So at a later date, I made another slip, and I started off by making the shape of the beard by forming a small ball, and I flattened it with my thumb, and I used my knife to cut it into kind of a square shape, and I used a slip to adhere it onto my sculpture. Then I took a small piece of clay and I rolled it out really long for the hair, and I used the slip to paste it onto my sculpture. So next, I took a small piece of clay and I rolled it into a ball and flattened it, and I cut the piece in half, and I used this to make the back of the hair kind of look like it's parted into braids. So I measured it on the head and I cut the pieces so it would fit, and I used a slip to adhere it onto the back of the head like you see in the second photo. I then used a wet paper towel to smoothen out the clay to make it look more seamless. So then I used a pencil and a knife to carve out the details of my Sumerian sculpture. So I used the knife on the hair and the back of the hair, and I used the pencil for the beard. Then I took a really small amount of clay to make the lips of the Sumerian sculpture, and I continued the beard up next to the lips. Then I created more details on the tops of the beard that I had just added, and then I took a really tiny piece of clay to make the nose and carved out the beginning of the eyes. And as you see in the second photo, I used my knife to carve out the details in the skirt. And here are the photos of the front and the back of my finished Sumerian sculpture.